All right, so get this. Today, we're diving into ancient Britain.
Oh, cool.
But not the Roman roads, everyone knows about those.
Right, right.
We're talking way before that. Like, how did people get around before paved roads?
Now, that is a good question. I mean, we're talking about a time before cars, trains, even horses were rare.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is all about ancient tracks.
Yeah.
Like, seriously old pathways.
The kind of stuff most people just walk over and never even notice, right?
Totally. And this is where Alfred Watkins comes in. He wrote The Old Straight Track.
Ah, Watkins, a classic.
Right. So he was looking at these ancient tracks, and he started to notice something really interesting. He believed they weren't just random paths.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What did he think they were then?
He thought they were deliberately planned, like part of some ancient system connecting important places. He even had a name for it, leys.
Leys. Interesting. So how did he come to that conclusion?
Well, he was looking at these tracks, and they were unlike any he'd ever seen, super straight, often cutting right across hills and valleys.
Huh. Ignoring natural obstacles, you're saying? That's not the easy way to do things.
Exactly. And that's what made him think there was something more to it. He figured they had to have a system for plotting these paths. And guess what he thought was key to the whole thing?
I'm gonna guess something to do with the landscape.
You got it, mounds. Those bumps and dips you see all over the countryside. Watkins thought they were crucial.
Mounds? Really? Like burial mounds? I mean, they're everywhere.
Yeah, but he noticed they weren't just randomly scattered. He was really into these big, prominent ones, often perched on hilltops and ridges, like they were meant to be seen from far away.
Ah, so almost like ancient landmarks. They'd stand out in the landscape.
Exactly. Imagine you're walking through this ancient landscape, no roads, no signs, and then boom, you reach the top of a hill, and there's this huge mound in the distance.
A beacon guiding your way. Makes sense. You'd be drawn to it.
Right, so that's what Watkins thought. That these mounds were like waypoints in this ancient navigation system. And he's got this great example, the turret tump. This massive mound, nearly 25 feet high.
Wow, 25 feet. That's a statement.
Right, and someone even described it to him as a lookout station because it's got such a commanding view of the area. And, it got Watkins thinking.
It wasn't just a burial site. It was a marker, a point in the system he was uncovering.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting. He starts taking these detailed maps.
Wait, hold on. Maps. What kind of maps are we talking about?
They're called ordnance survey maps. They're these super detailed maps of Britain. And he starts drawing lines between these mounds. And guess what?
He started seeing these leys you're talking about.
Bingo. Straight lines connecting these mounds to other significant features in the landscape. Churches, ancient stones, even natural landmarks.
So it's like he's piecing together a giant puzzle, except the pieces are scattered across the landscape.
And the picture is this incredible network of straight lines crisscrossing the country, these leys.
This is blowing my mind. But okay, let's say I'm convinced these lies existed. How did people actually follow them? I mean, it's not like they had neon signs pointing the way, right?
This is where it gets even cooler. Think mark stones.
Mark stones. Okay, you're gonna have to explain this.
Okay, imagine these large, noticeable stones strategically placed along these lies, almost like ancient signposts.
Ah, so you're trekking across the countryside, you spot one of these stones, and you know you're on the right track, literally.
Exactly. Watkins thought these mark stones were key to the whole system. And get this, he found evidence that they weren't just practical markers.
What do you mean they were something more?
He thinks they evolved over time, took on a whole other layer of meaning.
Okay, now I am really curious. What kind of evidence are we talking about? Give me an example.
There's this one, the Grossmont Market Stone. They say that on market day, the first woman to place her basket on this stone didn't have to pay any tolls.
Whoa, seriously? That's amazing. So it's like this practical marker becomes woven into the fabric of their lives, their traditions.
Well, like these stones were gathering places, almost sacred points in the landscape. But were they just practical tools, to find your way? Or did they hold a deeper significance?
Watkins grappled with that, and that led him to another fascinating aspect of his research, the connection between these tracks and folklore.
Okay, I'm always up for a good story.
All right, so picture this. There's this giant Jack O'Kent, and he's leaping from one mountain to another.
Okay, sounds like a tall tale already.
Yeah, and he leaves his heel mark in the rock, right?
Hold on, like a giant footprint.
Exactly, embedded in the stone. And then, get this, he hurls these massive stones.
This guy sounds strong.
Oh, he's a giant, remember? Anyway, he throws these stones, and they land miles away, and they become landmarks.
Okay, I mean, it's a good story and all, but what does this have to do with the Aries?
That's the thing, right? Watkins started to see these fantastical stories, these myths and legends, as echoes of the past.
Interesting. So you're saying they weren't just stories, they were kind of like encoded memories.
Exactly. Like, what if those giant stones were actually mark stones, just exaggerated over time, by the storytelling?
So the stories were a way of remembering, a way to pass down knowledge that might have been lost otherwise.
Precisely. And it gets even more intriguing. Watkins, he noticed that some lasts seemed to align with, get this, astronomical events.
What, like the solstices and equinoxes, that kind of thing?
You got it. He found several instances where these ancient tracks seemed to line up with the movements of the sun and stars.
Wait, so are you saying these ancient Britons were incorporating astronomy into their navigation? That's incredible.
It's a possibility, isn't it? And it suggests a deeper understanding of the cosmos than we often give them credit for.
It makes you look at those perfectly straight lines differently. If they were aligning them with the stars, it wasn't just about getting from A to B. It was something, I don't know, almost spiritual.
It's certainly a thought-provoking idea, isn't it? And it makes you wonder about the Romans.
The Romans? Wait, what about them?
Well, they were known for their roads, their engineering. Did they recognize any of this when they came to Britain? Did they just pave over these ancient pathways? Or did they see something there, something worth incorporating into their own systems?
Now that is a question. I mean, the Romans were incredible builders, but were they willing to adapt, to work with what was already there? It's like finding, I don't know, an ancient temple while you're building a new shopping center.
Yeah, what do you do, right? Pave over history. Or try to work with it.
Exactly. So did the Romans just bulldoze everything?
Well, Watkins, he found evidence that suggests they did both. I mean, they definitely had their own ideas about road building, but there are places where Roman roads seem to line up with, almost like they're built right on top of, sections of these older tracks.
No way. So they weren't afraid to use what was already there.
It seems that way. It makes you wonder if they saw these leys, these alignments, and thought, hey, these ancient Britons were onto something.
Yeah, why reinvent the wheel, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're talking about something as fundamental as roads.
Exactly, and it makes you think about the landscape differently, doesn't it?
Like it's this, I don't know, this history book with layer upon layer of stories.
Right, like you have these ancient tracks, maybe even aligned with the stars, and then the Romans come along, add their roads, and then centuries later, here we are, driving around, totally clueless about what's beneath our feet.
That's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. We could be walking in the footsteps of, like, ancient astronomers and not even realize it.
It really makes you appreciate the enduring legacy of these tracks, this hidden network woven into the fabric of our world.
I know I'm going to be looking at those hills and pathways a lot differently from now on.
Who knows what you might find?
That's the beauty of these deep dives. Always something to get you thinking, to see the world with fresh eyes. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring.